My name is Leonid Lenny Orlov. I use he, him, his pronouns. I will be your host this morning. And today we're going to continue celebrating Pride Month with a special 90-minute City of Seattle panel. We'll hear from Shelley Brown from Parks, Dominic Stevens from the Mayor's Office, and Kristen Ramirez from Arts. We'll also get a brief update on vaccinations and Washington State reopening and hear from our sponsor, the Seattle Public Library. By the way, stay tuned till the very end. We got a special video for you and a special announcement. And if this programming brings you value, we do appreciate you considering subscribing to our YouTube channel, which is at Aging King County on YouTube. It helps us grow. It helps us bring you this programming. If you click the subscribe button and enable notifications, you'll be on your way up to becoming an age-friendly champion, and we appreciate you for that. First, though, I would love to invite you to acknowledge the indigenous land that the City of Seattle is on. And here at the Seattle Human Services, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe, and we invite you to visit www.duwamishtribe.org to learn more about the Duwamish people of the inside, people who are still here. And there you can find out how you can support the tribe, how you can get involved and learn more about the amazing Duwamish people. Thank you so much. And if we could please go on to the next slide. A couple of housekeeping notes is that language access is available on this broadcast. If you click the underneath your video, whether you're watching on YouTube or live, if you click the gear underneath your video, you can select one of the languages that are available. And currently we are offering Arabic, Chinese, English, Korean, Russian, Spanish, and Vietnamese. I want to introduce my crew today. We have several moderators here in the virtual studio. Michael Taylor-Judd, Meg Wolf, Gita Hammam, and Justin England. And as I mentioned, I'm your host, Lenny Orlov. We're all with the Human Services Department here at the city. The folks that you see on the screen will capture any feedback, any notes that you send over to us. And then we will pass it along to our presenters. One other thing before we get started, what if you have a question that's, beyond what the panel has to present or the library or human services department? There is a network of community organizations in Seattle and King County. It's called Community Living Connections. And they offer services and resources such as food and meals and minor repairs and things like that, and rent support in some cases that you could access in your neighborhood, in your community. They do have a call center, though, where you can find out where these resources are available. So that number is 1-844-348-5464, and we'll put that in the chat of the online webinar. And they have a website, communitylivingconnections.org. Capitalization is not important, where you can see a map of all the different organizations and find one in your community. We hope that you'll pass this along to folks in your life who could benefit from these resources. Thank you very much for that. And if we could please go on to the next slide here. I failed to mention what Age-Friendly Seattle is, and Age-Friendly Seattle is this whole idea of making cities and states and countries in the world a better place to grow up and grow old. And that's what we're committed to here at the City of Seattle. And we have two programs that run twice a month, or I guess they're biweekly or twice monthly programs. On the third Thursday of the month is the Civic Coffee Hour, which you're participating in right now. Thank you so much for being here. On the first Thursday of the month, though, there is another program called Close to Home, Stories of Health, Tech, and Resilience. And I want to invite you to come back to meet Alessia Kennedy, who is the founder and executive director of Women United. This is a presentation on kinship care about grandparents who are caring for their grandchildren. I'm excited to hear about specifically what this organization does for grandmothers who are supporting their grandchildren. Certainly come back if you can. And regardless, please check out their website. It's www.womenunitedseattle.org. You'll be able to join us at bit.ly/age-friendly live. The capitalization is important here. Age-friendly and live are capitalized. The access numbers are going to be different. We're going to be completely transitioning over to WebEx starting July 1st because WebEx is offering language access nowadays, but your online access is not going to change. You'll still go to that bit.ly link, click the join event, and you'll be right there. Both of these events are produced in partnership with the Seattle Public Library. The library has been an amazing partner. We've always, worked with the library because the idea of making spaces age-friendly, certainly the library is one of them. But in 2020, they signed on to offer us space where we could actually meet in person, which is what we do and have done for over a dozen years. At the Civic Coffee Hour. Currently, everything is virtual, so the library is here virtually. So next, we're going to hear a brief update from them on their road to reopening. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Our next guest is Nancy Slow. Nancy is the older adults program manager here at the Seattle Public Library. And Nancy, so great to have library as a partner. And the stage is all yours. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Lenny. And good morning, everyone. So I am the Older Adults Program Manager at the library, and I work to create programs and suggest services to the library to make the library as age-friendly as possible and as accessible as possible. So things are changing very quickly, of course, in the library. And so I wanted to give you a short update about what's new, what's happening, and how you can find out information about what branches might be open and the hours. I also just want to express my appreciation as well for our partnership with Age Friendly and with Seattle Aging and Disability Services and Human Resources. I learn a lot from these programs myself, and as a librarian, I just like information, right? That's in our spirit as librarians. So could I have the next slide? So right now we have 7 branches actually open for in-person services. My slide, I'm going to read those branches. It's Ballard, Beacon Hill, Broadview, Douglas Truth, Lake City, Rainier Beach, and the Southwest branch. And we are opening more and more branches now for in-person. The Central Library, yay, that's my home branch, is going to open next week on the 22nd. We won't have the whole building open, but you'll be able to get to the fiction collection, the DVDs, you'll be able to browse, you'll be able to get to the floor that has all the computers. We'll have fewer computers available, but you will be able to get there as well. You might have seen that there was an article in the Seattle Times just a couple of days ago, which described additional branches that will be opening. So yeah, things are changing. Even I had to look last night and make sure that I really got everything that was happening in the library. Could I have the next slide? So what can you do once you get in the library? So right now, almost everything. Browsing the library stacks. I think that's my most favorite thing to do in the library when I don't know what I'm looking for. I just want to get some ideas, find a new author. That's the best for me. Computer access, Wi-Fi access. You can do photocopying, scanning. We have charging stations, which is great. You can pick up your holds, you can check out books, you can just sit if you want to and read a magazine or newspaper. newspaper. You can get reference help from staff, get a library card, talk about your account. We really are open for business. So could I have the next slide? Meanwhile, we do have what we call curbside pickup at a bunch of other branches that aren't quite open yet for in-person services. So that means that you basically place a hold in the library catalog. You wait until you hear that the material is in. You go to that branch and you pick it up, check it out. The staff will check it out for you and you can pick it up. You can also get some cool packages of books, some surprise packages that have, like a mystery collection, a selection, or a speculative fiction, fantasy collection. And one of my favorite services at the library, we call it Peak Picks. Those are books that are in current high interest fiction and nonfiction, where there could be a lot of holds on the other copies, and we buy hundreds of copies of those books so that you can get them quickly. So if anybody is a fan of the Great British Baking Show, the season 6 winner was Nadia Hussain, and she has a new cookbook out called Nadia Bakes, which I have to get to a library to get a copy because I love that show and I loved that season of the show. If it's difficult when you get to a branch to get out of your car or to wait online, you can actually phone the branch when you get there and staff will check out your item and bring it to you. So we are trying to make that as accessible as possible. Could I have the next slide? So because things are changing so rapidly, my suggestion is that if you have access, you go onto the library's website and you check our Road to Reopening link, and you find out what branches are opening and what days and what hours. You can also call our quick information. That's fabulous staff, and that phone number is 206-386-4636. Or you can email the library, or you can go on to online chat and chat with the library staff right then and there. I'm sure going to actually check before I go to a branch to make sure the actual days and the hours of opening. Could I have the next slide? So one of the things that is so cool that we just started to offer, a lot of libraries in Washington State are able to offer this now, is the Discover Pass, which gives you access to all the state parks and wildlife areas and all the water access points. And, it can be pricey to get one for a year. You can also buy them, but they're like that annual pass is $30 to $35, and you can get a daily pass. But I love that the libraries are offering this. So you have to actually put a hold on it. There's a limited number of Discover Passes, but once you get it for 2 weeks, and bam, off you are into the outside. And I think that everybody just really wants to be outside now. Okay, the next slide. And then here is my second favorite thing about the library. It's our summer book bingo for adults. Oftentimes in the summer, libraries have had wonderful, wonderful programs for children, and adults, we felt left out. So about 7 years ago, we, with Seattle Arts and Lecture as our partner, created Book Bingo. You get the Book Bingo card, and there are 25 squares, and each square has a type or a genre of book to read. And so you read the books for those squares, fill in the name and the author and the title. And if you get 5 in a row, if you get a bingo, you can submit your card for drawing for prizes. If you go for the whole thing, you get a blackout. Then we've got some fabulous limited number of prizes, including a subscription to Arts and Lecture for this year for 2 people. So that's fabulous. We have on the library's website, there's book suggestions for each of the categories. And the card is in English and in Spanish. And some of the categories are just really fun, like making you laugh. That's a good one for right now. A book which takes place in a Olympic host city. That's a new one for this year. There's beach reads, those really quick, light, don't have to think too much about it. And there's one of my favorite categories is mysteries. And I'm just reading about a detective from Accra, Ghana. And I love looking at reading mysteries which take place at different locations because I learn a lot about the world that way. And I don't know if we can do it this time, but if anybody has any books that they've been reading for Book Bingo and want to put them into the chat, that would be great. So you can get the Book Bingo card at the branches, or you can print it yourself if you have access to that. Could I have the next card? The Black History and Culture Collection is a wonderful collection that was created with library staff and with the community at the Douglas Truth Branch. And over the years, we've been digitizing the collection. And it consists of actually not books, but what we call in the library world ephemera. So it's pamphlets and brochures and newsletters and things like that. You can find the digitized versions of many of the documents up on our website. And one of the ones that has recently been digitized is the brochure for the first annual Juneteenth celebration, which was in 1980 at Seattle Center. It was a 3-day celebration. And some of the activities were pretty wonderful. There was a Lena Horne vocal concert at the Opera House. There were films, there were art exhibits, workshops, and every day there was voter registration. So that's a really fun document to look at as Juneteenth is just coming up in a few days. And could I have the next slide? We also have, because we're celebrating Pride Month, we have a database at the library called the LGBTQ History and Culture Collection. We've had the collection, the database for a number of years now. And the library, the online databases that the library has, we purchased them. It's really wonderful information on all different kinds of topics. We have almost 75 different databases: genealogy, investing, travel, learning languages, all kinds of topics. And you can, for most of the databases, you can get in from home. You need a library card and your PIN number to do it. If you're in a library, you can just go to one of the computers and get to it directly. But this particular database, the LGBTQ database, begins with materials starting in the 1940s. It's got primary materials, letters and diaries and interviews, has a huge number of secondary materials, meaning reports and research, newsletters, magazines, and you can search for people, for organizations, topics, city. I mean, it's a very powerful search engine, and you can search. You can even go to a particular publication, and you could read the whole publication there. And it's constantly updated with new materials. So highly recommend that. And the next slide, please. So I just want to invite you to visit our older adults pages on the library website, which is spl.org/next chapter. And we are, the page contains our programs. It contains our book lists that I've been creating over the last year or so, resource links to organizations that would be of interest to older adults and for reference. And again, we're constantly updating that as well. And then my final slide is just an invitation. If you want to get a hold of me and talk about older adult services, please get a hold of me at my email at nancy.sloat@spl.org. So that's the update for today. And thanks again. Back to you, Lenny.
All right. Thank you so much, Nancy. Appreciate the update as always. Love to see the library opening up, celebrating Pride, and looking forward to, my local branch being open. It's not on the list currently, but hopefully soon. I wanted to mention to you, Nancy, before we let you go, and please stick around in case we have questions for you later on. There was a comment that came through, and there was a very nice comment. It says, I went to the Lake City branch last weekend. It felt great. So wonderful to interact again with the very helpful staff there. So maybe you can pass that along to the staff. That would be amazing.
That's a very nice comment. And I think we also feel we're people, and we love interacting directly with all of our patrons. So thank you very much for the comment. I'll pass it on.
And it looks like there is just now I see another very quick question. Does SPL have anything planned for the 31st anniversary of the ADA, July 26th?
I will have to find out, and I can get back to Lenny. I haven't seen anything. We did a big celebration last year. We worked with the city and with other organizations. So I actually don't have the answer to that, but I can get that to Lenny.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. And folks, we can also add that information in the comments once it becomes available. Thank you again, Nancy. We appreciate you stopping by. Please stick around if you can. And at this point, we're going to move right along here. Just a brief update here. I really don't want to get that much into this because next month, spoiler alert, we will have two folks from Public Health Seattle and King County. One of them a registered nurse, and another one is an epidemiologist. Always have trouble with that word. We will have them really break this down. So I just want to mention the one change to this website, and the website is coronavirus.wa.gov. That website has been up since probably March or April last year. It really has a lot of nice updates in over 30 languages about what's happening with the pandemic and about vaccinations. They list a phone number, 1-800-525-0127, which is the hotline for finding out where vaccinations are or asking any other questions about COVID-19. And then I always want to share the short number for texting to get vaccine locations. That number is 438-829. And when you text there, don't just send it empty text, put in your zip code, and you'll get a message right back with a number of locations where not only vaccines are offered, but where they're actually available. That's a nationwide database. The one thing that's different, you'll notice there's an arrow if you're watching this online, and the arrow is pointing to the right-hand side margin that has a variety of, I'm looking for vaccine information, travel information, business reopening guidance, stuff like that. That's been there for the past, 3 or 4 months. This new thing is Shot of a Lifetime giveaway. And when you click that, I actually can't open it here because I work for the city, and it's a lottery website. And so I had to just kind of guess what's on there. But from just knowing it, I know that they're giving away to people who are vaccinated. They're looking at databases statewide and giving away quite a bit of money for people to encourage folks to get vaccinated. So if you haven't got your shot yet, this may be an incentive. But I think a bigger incentive is that our state is opening up on June 30th, and we have reached in Seattle and now in King County as of Tuesday, we've reached over 70% fully vaccinated, the vaccines seem to be working. So with that, I'd like to move us along to our main event here. I'm going to invite to the stage our panelists in order of, eventual appearance. First up is Dominique Stevens. Then we have Kristen Ramirez, and Cheryl Brown. All right, so folks, welcome to this program. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate the city of Seattle, celebrating Pride, but we can't wait to find out how that happens. But before we hear about what each of your areas of the city does, or maybe what the whole city does that you're aware of, we'd love to hear maybe just a couple of minutes of, about who you are, and then we'll move along with the presentation. With that, Dominique, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Lenny. Good morning. I'm Dominique Stevens, she, her pronouns. It is just a delight and an honor and a pleasure to be with you all this morning. In my time with the city of Seattle, I've been able to work with human services and age friendly in a lot of different ways. And so this is just an absolute pleasure. And before we were living in this time, I would often come to the coffee hours, not just to snag a donut, but also to just learn all the wonderful things that was happening, not just in human services and age friendly, but just around the city in general. I think age friendly does a really great job of bringing a lot of different information to us. And so I'm really appreciative of this group here. So a little bit more about me. I, as of last week, was working in the city of Seattle as the interim co-director for external relations and outreach with the mayor's office. I am now in a new role as serving as executive director for Ingersoll Gender Center, which is a trans and gender diverse advocacy organization. So it's my honor to be there now. But in my former role, my portfolio was extremely expansive, which mirrors our LGBTQ plus IA community. I did everything around LGBTQ folks, whether it was working with our LGBTQ older adults or our LGBTQ youth and everybody in between. Supported various, not just Pride celebrations, but we did that as well, but also the intentionality about why we celebrate Pride. It was started as a riot, right? We know this in New York City by trans women of color, right? And when we bring in, and this is a great time, and Nancy, thank you so much for the history at the library, because being a Black lesbian in Seattle, who is extremely androgynous, I'm like super down the middle with my stuff, is like wanting to know all the things, right? So here I am during Pride Month, also thinking about the fact that just now our government has now decided to recognize, nationally, Juneteenth, right? And really what that was a lack of information sharing to Black Americans, right? Folks who are of the diaspora and folks who are from the, descendants of stolen people, right? And so for me, my work was, I'm going to try to do anything I can for all of my folks in this intersection. What do you need? Right? What do you need from the city of Seattle? We are stewards to you as community members. And so for that, I've had opportunities to work with organizations that are like, hey, we need you to work with our budgets and our technical assistance so we can make sure that young LGBTQ folks have housing and they have education and they have opportunities to employment, right? They have their basic necessities, right? That's food and living and all these other things. I've been able to, again, in this space, work on the other side with human services, with older adults who said, don't erase me, right? I'm here, break down the walls of isolation. I have wisdom, I have years of experience, and I would love to connect with young people. And so I had a good opportunity of setting up an age-friendly LGBTQ older adults Saturday forum that we did some years ago, that we spent time just, what do you all need and how do we want to stay connected? And so also I've been on the hard side of stuff, of course, with the mayor's office. And so in this current time of making sure that our elected officials across the board and everybody who works and represents them is actually accountable to real change, right? And so that means as we're committing a lot of, or I mean, I say we because it's only been a week old. So we as the city of Seattle are committing a lot of dollars at the table that we ensure that there's equal and equitable access to that capital in the way that community needs, not in the way that we think is going to be cute because we said something as an elected official and then we checked the box, but we made sure there was clear lines to how you can come to the table, build your table, and get that money. And this is still longstanding work. This is why I was just real quick, and I'll pass it on, Lenny. But my mom was like, why are you leaving the city of Seattle to go back to community? And that's crazy. In her mind, as an older adult and a lot of wisdom, when you move to a place like the city, you stay there for a while, right? Yet for me, my work is directly entangled with who I am as a person, deeply rooted in community. And so with that saying, I am a native of Seattle. I'm honored to be a person that's been able to work in Seattle in a lot of different ways. I serve on a lot of different boards and work with a lot of different organizations. So I sit on the board for GSBA, Greater Seattle Business Chamber. I also sit on a board, POCAN. POCAN works on health related issues for folks who are specifically dealing with HIV and AIDS. I also work with Feast Seattle, which is a fantastic food justice organization that's led by young people and dismantling those systems in food and how they show up in school. And so a lot of different intersections there for me. And I'm gonna pause there because that was a lot.
All right. Thank you, Lenny. And thank you all for having me today. Dominique, those are like big shoes to fill. Wow. Thank you for that intersectional, impassioned, beautiful introduction. I feel like you have your fingers in all the city pies and community pies and are doing a fantastic work. So, wow, it's an honor to be on this panel with you. Maybe it's a time of great inflection and change to Dominique's point. And so I'm in a similar place where today is my last day at the city of Seattle after being here for 6 years. I'm in a unique position that doesn't really exist anywhere else in the country. I came to learn in that my position is shared between the Office of Arts and Culture and the Department of Transportation. I work in public art, and you'll be hearing a little bit more about what that means in my presentation. But for 6 years, I've been mostly project managing a whole host of projects that support our infrastructure, our bridges, transportation-related projects, and artists. And the Office of Arts and Culture has prioritized for years now a lens of racial equity. So we've really moved to shift the needle on public art, who gets the commissions, how we listen to community, how we engage artists, how we champion artists who want to cut their teeth on public art. That's some of the work I'm most proud of that we've done at the city. And I sit on both sides of the table. I'm also outside of work an artist. So it's an interesting place to be championing public art and learning the ropes of public art, elevating other artists. And then also in my own free time, I paint a lot of murals and I do site-specific integrated art and community work in places like Yesler Terrace. So I just am in a lot of different places, but really happy to be here today and that the city offers, like portals into the important work that we're doing through talks like this. So thanks for having me.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cheryl Brown. I am with Seattle Parks and Recreation. I really appreciate you guys. And Dominique, that was an excellent, rich introduction. I feel rather shallow with what I wrote down. But anyway, I have been working for Seattle Parks and Recreation since 1987. I don't know if that makes me experienced or just old, but I absolutely love Seattle Parks and Recreation. I just see it as a vehicle for fighting crime, really, starting with the kids and moving up. And then now I kind of see my role as educating older adults in issues of the day through, educational and recreational programs and just communication. But I have a degree in recreation administration. All my jobs, I have to laugh, since I graduated from high school, have been recreation related. And I have a certificate in gerontology from UC Davis. But in 2016, really saw a need for programs for LGBTQ older adults. And we launched a program in partnership with Gen Pride through a series of resource fairs we did for the community, finding out what they wanted and what they saw and what the barriers were to participating at community centers. And so we launched that program. Sadly, when COVID started, we kind of folded everything and we went virtual, but we will be launching again, and I'll be talking about that in the fall with in-person programming. So I'm excited about that. In my private life, I also am an artist, and I play the hammered dulcimer, an instrument that many people may not know what it is, but my passion right now is gardening. I just put in a new lawn in my backyard, and I have a crow that's visiting me because I have a little fountain. So if you see me looking, it's the crow is coming here and soaking his food in the little water pitcher I put out for him. So excited to be here, excited to talk about our programs. And I think that when I talk, there will be some links in the chat to what will be open this summer for Seattle Parks and Recreation and our lifelong recreation brochure. So thanks.
All right. Well, thank you all so much. It's such an honor to have all of you on the panel this morning. As a city, I'm fairly new to the city of Seattle, and as an ally to the community, I so value all of your work outside of work and at work, and it's sad to see. You go actually, and Dominique, I know you've come to coffee hours. You were just there, which is awesome. You've done that age-friendly thing that you mentioned. So really appreciate you. Let's go ahead and get into the presentations, and then we'll see what folks want to hear. But I want to invite everybody who's watching right now, even if you're watching the recording, go ahead and leave a comment. Say how much you appreciate the work that these particular panelists are doing. But maybe you think the city can do more or can do things differently. We'd love to hear that. Please put that in the comments. So at this time, just turning it over to you, Dominique. And on the next slide, I have a picture here. This is from a video. I didn't have any pictures of Dominique, and I realized that's because I was live streaming that afternoon or morning or whatever that was. And that was quite a float that was created with support from all departments, and specifically parks, and the mayor's office. And I'll just stop here, and I'll let you talk about that. Thank you, Dominique, for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you again, Lenny. Thank you all. And so, well, in this moment, this was actually, sad to say, our last in-person Pride parade. That's what this picture is from. And so this year, and Lenny, thank you for sending me the clip of me on here chatting, because this was actually in this parade, the first time we had, I think we had, let's see, so the city has a lot of departments. I can't remember the number off the top of my head right now, but I think in this particular parade, we had more than half of the city departments show up and be a part of the Pride Parade, which I don't know how y'all might feel about it, but it was a lot of work to get that many people there to represent the city of Seattle. And often, I think, before I started working with the Office of Civil Rights on coordinating the things that would happen, the city's participation in various Pride events, we had to really break down the idea that we weren't one city family, right? And that, and I think very often we get into our workspaces and we just go like this sometimes, right? And we're in our little boxes. And this time it was that we are many departments, but one city heart. And it was, and I used that, Lenny knows, I used that a lot. It was like many departments, but one city heart. And so really it was like, let's come together, let's show out, let's show up. Let's bring our kids, bring our pets, bring anybody. Literally, even this was one of the more intentional ones that we, with Parks, so thank you so much to Parks too, was really saying, how do we make this accessible to anybody who works for the city of Seattle, and their families too. And so even if you can't march the whole time, if you can't do all these different things, how do we make it accessible for you, right? And so the really cool part is that the float that I'm sitting on, I wish we had a bigger picture, is that the Parks Department actually recreated a park that's in New York on this float to represent. It was like a new park representing, I can't remember exactly, LGBTQ folks, and there's a bigger meaning. Let me figure it out later. But long story short, they recreated that park on the float, and it came with benches. And so what we did was put folks on the park, and it was so great. And then we had a DJ, and we had a great time. People did like Zumba stuff from Parks, which was great. And I think, Cheryl, you had a part of that. If I recall, maybe the Rainbow folks were a part of that. At SDOT, transportation said, oh, let me work on bikes. Let me try to see if we get bikes. Also, we also worked really closely with Seattle Pride, these are Seattle Pride for Awareness. There's a lot, we use Pride a lot in a lot of things. Seattle Pride for Awareness is the organization that puts on the parade, and they also put on some of the things that happened in Capitol Hill when it was in person, okay? So we worked with Seattle Pride to make sure, because they started asking people to reduce their vehicles, except for King County and Seattle. So what we started to do in this parade was to also help our departments be mindful of how much we were taking up space from other community participants as well. So what we tried to do was really compact how many vehicles we had per their requests, and really slow it down. Now, the work that I hope to hand off and keeping in partnership, or I am handing off, is there's been a request as we're looking at how we talk about police reform and criminal justice and justice in general that has real accountability to it. So there was a request from Seattle Pride to ask us to figure out how we work or not work with SPD, right? And so I'm saying this very lightly. It's no disrespect. And so what we encouraged was actually a collaborative conversation with community and SPD to figure out what are the ways and how the ways that we continue to have some kind of enforcement, but not the overly intense enforcement. What some people don't know is that, we see them, SPD lines the route, right? Because it's a huge parade. Yet what they asked for, what Seattle Pride was going to ask for was, how do we do it? So some people don't know, but when you are granted overtime in that department, it goes to the higher ranking officers, right? That's the first set of people who get it, and not the folks who are like, just got in, right? So the first request was re-looking at how they did their internal practices. If you're going to do something as fun as this, allow your lower ranking officers to have first dibs on the overtime. Likely they're not at the same salary as everybody else. And so let's look at some real equity on the inside, right? Number two, you don't need a uniform to do this work. You don't need to come with your bells and whistles and your thick vests. Can we get you into a cute polo that has maybe a rainbow thing that lets us know so there was a lot of different work. And then can we reduce that? Can we really lean on community support and bodies and less SPD in that? And so that was just the beginning work. And hopefully during this time, as we're just slowly coming back into this new way of working, living, honoring each other's health, our anxiety levels and things like that, can we resurface how does that work? But really what it was a clear, open dialogue. So also this particular year, this was at the height, right after Pulse, okay, the shooting at Pulse that happened in Orlando. And really organizers said, okay, how do we work better together? So really I got an opportunity this particular time, I'm really just referring to this picture that's on the screen, to work with a lot of different event organizers, business owners, community members, to say, what are the best practices to keep our community safe and allow them to celebrate in the most holistic way? So this particular year of this picture was a lot of internal work to have conversations with people on how do we continue to progress forward, and how we show up. Because I think most folks, it's just a fun time, right? It's like, oh, it's a parade and we got to wear really cute outfits. Or if you are a party person, you can go to a party almost every day. Or if you're, a family person, you go to a park and have all these different events. And most people just see the surface level celebration. But there's a lot of work that comes in protecting the bodies of LGBTQ people, specifically our Black and brown trans siblings, right? Specifically our gender expansive folks, right? Black bodies in general, POC bodies in general, right? There's a lot of work that comes into making sure that those folks can be seen and taken care of and then celebrate. But you know what happens? It usually comes on the shoulders of POC folks to have to do a lot of this work. So what we try to do is also, how do we open this conversation so the work is not all the way on us all the time? So that's kind of like where this picture is. That was that year. Going forward, of course, there was a lot of other changes that we had to make in this during this pandemic, of how does the city show up in real accountability, right? So my office specifically, we know it's been very difficult with the mayor's office because there's just been a lot of different things. So we had to navigate relationships in the most holistic fashion of listening, honoring that people were upset, that they were not accepting the behavior of our leadership anymore, and that they were going to hold us really accountable to that. So a lot of things shifted last year. For example, we usually do a flag raising celebration, and it's usually very big and it's super happy. Last year, it was a really small flag raising celebration, and really, on behalf of our LGBTQ commission through Office of Civil Rights, they just went and they did their own thing as they should, and they put up the flag to make sure that it's still there. And then it was, how do we shift other things? So, for example, the mayor's office usually has a pride celebration. It's called the Mayor's Pride Reception, and it is very light and fluffy. I'm gonna tell you, it's like nice hors d'oeuvres and it's some good drinks and it's like executive directors here and CEOs over there. And what we really try to do is change that, right? We wanted to make sure that Mayor's Pride Reception was open and accessible to all people, regardless of titles, right? Then we also wanted to pivot, and what we ended up doing was just kind of holding off on it, but changing the reception in general. And so instead of it being like a nice happy hour mixer type thing, it really should change into a dialogue and almost similar to this, a really intensive conversation with our mayor, and regardless who that is, about the needs of LGBTQ plus expansive people, right? And instead of it just being so light and airy, and we have so much fun, it's great, I'm not taking away fun, but we need to be intentional about the times that we have with our leaderships and making sure that, again, there's accessibility to talking to the folks who make the decisions on our behalf. So I'm gonna pause there.
That's great. And Dominique, again, with apologies, the whole picture of the float is not there. But there's a video. So if you stick around, you will see the whole thing on the video, and you'll see the work of Dominique on the day off, and how dynamic and how engaging it is. That's right. That's the reaction that I had. So let's move on to, don't go anywhere, Dominique, because we'll have a Q&A for everyone. Let's go to the next slide and invite back to the stage Kristen. I believe you are next here. Before we go, on this next slide, this is the general contact information for Office of the Mayor, Jenny Durkin, jenny.durkin@seattle.gov, and the phone number 206-684-4000. These are the numbers that I got. Is there any other way of getting in touch with the mayor or the mayor's office, Dominique?
That's a good email. Honestly, just for awareness, if you send an email there, it will then be disseminated to the best representative in the mayor's office to answer your question or handle your correspondence.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks again for being here and for representing the mayor's office in the space. And we'll be back. We'll be back with you a short while later. See you soon. All right. And Kristen, welcome back to the stage. If we could go to the next slide. Yes, thank you very much. The Office of Arts and Culture, take it away.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm excited to share We're going to kind of move back and forth in time a little bit with this, but I'm excited to share the work of the AMP, the AIDS Memorial Pathway, and in particular focusing on a public art boot camp we did to really elevate, build the capacity of, and train up a cohort of LGBTQ plus artists for this pathway, for this public art opportunity. And so this is a collaboration between the Office of Arts and Culture, city office, and the AMP, which is a nonprofit, so a public-private partnership that involved many, many, many people, many, many, many conversations, a lot of building relationships behind the scenes to make this happen. So we'll go to the next slide. I want to just talk a little bit about public art. So again, I represent the Office of Arts and Culture at least one more day today. And Seattle, I think most of us, whether we know it or not, feel spoiled by how much art we have in our environment here in Seattle. I know I go to other places sometimes and I'm just like, wow, we really are spoiled with how much art we have in our environment. Seattle in 1973 adopted a percent for art ordinance. And so we've had this as part of like the tapestry of our city for a really long time. And essentially means that for big capital projects, if we're getting a new library or a fire station or even like a series of sidewalks or a bridge or things like that, 1% of that construction budget can go to public art. So this is public funding for art, which is beautiful. And it includes our civic art collection, which is a huge collection of physical artworks in, you can think of them in like exterior spaces, like you can think of like Hammering Man outside the SAM or that kind of thing. Temporary projects, which increasingly can mean all kinds of modalities of art making, including like more performance and community engaged projects. The waterfront is such a giant project, and we're going to see a whole suite of permanent public art projects along the waterfront as that starts to come into place, really radically changing the front of our city. And we also see a lot of art plans. We hire artists and other kinds of creative thinkers to scope and look at like where are the resources and how do we align them with our values and what are art projects that we should be looking at. And just one thing I want to say about as an artist and someone who just champions art all day long, I really believe in the transformative power of art. I have this little quote sitting on my desk here. I brought it from my seat at SMT. It reads, "Art reflects the values, aspirations, and questions of a culture. It's a mechanism for a society to articulate how it imagines itself." So that kind of says what I think about the power of art and why it's important for all of us. Next slide. And then just to speak for the AMP. So again, we've been working for years now in close partnership with the AIDS Memorial Pathway. And I think y'all heard from Tom Rasmussen, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. I'm just sorry, Lenny, I don't remember what the date was, about the AMP. Really exciting project. So the AMP's mission is to create a physical space for remembrance and reflection, to tell the stories of the diverse communities in response to the AIDS pandemic, and then to let it not be a thing of the past. We're still dealing with HIV/AIDS. So to really let it be a call to action and a call to awareness and a call to end stigma and discrimination. So that's the AMP's mission. Next slide. And some of this you may have seen if you tuned in to the last session, but I'm just going to give a brief kind of overview of this project. It's really expansive. So we're looking at a rendering here, kind of a romantic rendering. You're hovering above Cal Anderson Park on Capitol Hill. You're looking into these brand new buildings that were built on top of the Capitol Hill Light Rail Station. And there's a new plaza there. The farmers market is now hosted there. And this is sort of the seat of the AMP, which is not one thing, but a whole pathway of projects. So there's 4 permanent projects, permanent public art projects. We did a whole suite of temporary projects. That's what I'm going to be focusing on now. There was a master art plan, and then this boot camp. So, and then the whole kind of like package over the whole of this will be a digital storytelling component that's coming online a bit later, where there'll be AR and VR, augmented reality and virtual reality stories that can really bring to life the impact of HIV/AIDS on Seattle and King County. So this was the dream, the rendering that we started, playing with 2-3 years ago. And now this is like kind of a reality because all these buildings are built, and it's just kind of amazing how fast our city changes every day. I just had some dinner here with my kid the other night. We're just kind of ambling through. It's just amazing. So next slide. Another rendering, and then the next slide is going to show this thing in real life. But So this is two of the four artworks that we're looking at here. So the X, I just love this artwork. So this is a Tacoma-based artist, Christopher Paul Jordan. I think just a complete genius in changing the way we think about public art. Chris was selected out of a really huge applicant pool who were interested in this commission for this centerpiece artwork. So this sits, it kind of foregrounds the whole plaza now. And Chris proposed looking at HIV positive, the positive in HIV, and kind of the universal symbol for like healthcare, that plus, and spinning on its axis to create a different kind of statement around, X marks the spot, Malcolm X, a portal, a place for gathering, all the things that X can invoke. But building it out of speakers to be both an act of celebration and mourning. So telling the history of the queer community and gathering to be joyful together and celebrate with dance and with music and all these creative expressions. The speakers also, speak to amplification of voices and protest and the importance of protest in this movement to raise awareness about HIV/AIDS and the pandemic. So this piece was just put in like last week, was finished. So it's so cool. I encourage you to visit it. The back, I just saw it again 2 nights ago, is like a polished mirror. So you see yourself and you're kind of like implicated in all of this. So that's pretty amazing. And then in the rendering on the right kind of bottom corner, you see these colorful signs. And those were created by Civilization. They're a design team here in Seattle. And they are harkening back to, again, the importance of protest in building awareness and, legislation and all of it, science and research toward combating HIV/AIDS. And so they harken back to earlier signs of protest and celebration and all the things. And these are kind of scattered throughout the AMP. So you see a little cluster here. There's some at the beginning of the plaza, and there's some going in like today, right now, at the north edge of Cal Anderson Park. Next slide, please. And then this is like taken last week. So there's a triumphant Christopher Paul Jordan. The sculpture's not quite in. We all met there one day when the installation crew, the fabricators were coming to put it in place. So there he is, like, wow, this thing actually came together 2 years later. And then an image of Civilizations, these signs that they've created that are called the connecting artworks. Next slide. So again, kind of like toggling back and forth in time. So we're just seeing what got installed, like we're literally in the last couple of weeks. And now I'm going to talk about this boot camp. And we saw the whole, this whole project, there's just kind of a suite of projects that work together. So it started with hiring an artist to write an art plan. And that plan helped us figure out, like, what are the budgets for each of these projects? How do we find the artists? What should they be called? How do we put together a selection panel? What are the themes of the artworks? And as part of that plan, the artist, Horatio Law, he's a Portland-based public artist, suggested highly that we do a public art boot camp. Public art is notoriously difficult to break into. You need to have a lot of expertise to get these commissions. There's a lot of money in it too. So I'm always championing people like who are studio artists who want to get into public art to figure out the tools of this trade, because there's a lot of public funding in it, and a lot of people want public art, both private development and public entities. So Public Art Bootcamp is something that has been run out of the Office of Arts and Culture for many, many years now, championed by personal heroes, Marsha Iwasaki and Elizabeth Johnson. And so for years, they have really reached out to artists in Seattle with a focus on Black, Indigenous, people of color to come and learn the ropes from more established artists of how you break into the field. And so here's just a couple images of past boot camps. And so we had this idea, we ought to offer a public art boot camp specifically to queer artists, to LGBTQ plus artists, and bring in others to teach, budgets, fabrication, contracts, like all the non-sexy parts of public art that you have to know about. And then also as an opportunity to bring the community together and be able to talk about queer art and the history of HIV/AIDS and kind of collectively mourn and celebrate. And so it was a really beautiful 2-day boot camp that we did back in 2019. And then that boot camp, you can go to the next slide. A little bit about the curriculum. First of all, here's an image from the Names Quilt Project. I think this is 1992, where I don't remember how many quilts filled all of the National Mall in DC. And to my way of thinking, this is like one of the coolest, most impactful pieces of public art that our country has seen. So I'm just going to put a shout out to the NAMES project there. So the curriculum, kind of 10 topics here, and for each topic, we brought in a different artist or artist team to teach the cohort about, these themes. So 1, let's talk about the history of HIV/AIDS. 2, let's talk about what is public art and what is, how do you break into this field? Number 3, budgets and contracts. 4, translating work from studio to public realm. Like, it's one thing to have these ideas in the studio and put them on paper, but then how do you make them live 3-dimensionally in the weather all year round? How do you do that? 5, temporary projects. What is the history of them? What does that mean? We are also introducing them to a competitive opportunity. So we had this cohort of about 15 artists, and they got to apply to a temporary project. That's what I'm going to talk more about. We looked at artist residencies, more about the AMP. Like I mentioned, we walked them through this call for temporary projects at the AMP. We walked through concepts of fabrication, and we did a lot of community-based practices and rituals and just like community building through this boot camp. Next slide. And so the whole boot camp kind of like, it was like a pipeline, right, to get this cohort of queer artists into the field of public art. And so it culminated in this call for temporary projects. And again, we had a cohort of about 15 people, but we had enough money to support 5 projects. So working arts and culture, working with the AMP, commissioned 5, and across a variety of disciplines. And all these temporary public art projects went in for Pride 2019. So this was like back when we could convene in real life. So David Rue, Gabriel Stromberg, Clyde Peterson, Timothy White Eagle, Pete Rush were the 5 artists that came out of the boot camp and got their first commissions. And what's really exciting is Gabriel Stromberg is part of the Team Civilization, who actually won one of the permanent, like, big budget commissions. So I think boot camp is like a proven capacity building training idea that works, that really does pull artists into successful public art commissions. So I think we're all really excited about how this project works. So I'm just going to show you like a little bit about each of what these folks did. They were really exciting. They all got kicked off in June of 2019. Some of them lasted a little bit longer. So next slide, please. So first, Clyde Peterson, just insanely talented, gifted transgender artist here in the Seattle region, animator, filmmaker, musician, does about a cajillion things, community builder. Clyde created a full-length album called Drone Butch Blues and performed the entirety of the album in Cal Anderson Park on June 22nd, 2019, and created, 500, I think, of these silkscreen posters from one of the songs, Forbidden Country, that were free and given out to all people who attended this concert in the park. So the album, the song lyrics were speaking to topics of secret and forbidden love, sex with strangers, the lives of hustlers, the lasting impact of AIDS, historic events and rebellions and protest, and all kind of interwoven with Clyde's own personal narrative and different oral histories. So it was a really beautiful album. This print was really beautiful. So the whole suite of things was great. Next slide. David Rue, dancer, choreographer. We were excited to support not just a visual artist, and we really reached out to artists that do all kinds of things, culinary arts and gardening and all these things that kind of sometimes seem more untraditional. So David Rue, extraordinary dancer, was commissioned for one of these temporary projects and very generously and graciously actually hired out, I think, 5 different movement-based artists to do like these pop-up performances mostly at the light rail stations, starting during Pride, June 2019, and then going all the way through November. And so they happened, I think they were on Saturdays. So David had students from the School of Spectrum Dance Theater, Randy Ford, Kyle Bernbach, and Gilbert Small from, they were performing at Cal Anderson Park, Nia Amina Minor, Marco Ferroni, Danny Terrell. So artists are always blow my mind in their inherent generosity. So David had this opportunity and then gave all the money away to all these other artists to champion their career. So that was really, really cool. These beautiful performances in and around the light rail station. Next slide. Gabriel Stromberg. And like I mentioned, Gabriel got this temporary commission, and then that really fed into Gabriel and a team winning one of the big money permanent commissions. So I think we're all really excited about how well that worked. You may have seen these really graphic vinyl panels. They spanned the whole construction fence from John to Denny along Broadway. I don't know, for 6 months or so. So we worked with the contractors who had, it was just a construction kind of like dusty nightmare zone there for a while. But Gabriel, looking at the pink triangle, this kind of universal emblem of LGBTQ plus empowerment, and thinking about how things have changed, right? We have different notions of gender and sexuality, and that's really fluid and changing all the time. And Gabriel kind of riffed on that and went from the pink triangle and kind of morphed down the length of Broadway till it ended at a pink circle. So these were these graphic forms that just took up the whole of Broadway for a period of time. I think really, really powerful graphically. And next slide, please. Artist Pete Rush created these condom quilts. He made a number of them. I'm sorry I don't have an actual photo of them, but they were attached to the cyclone fencing. And so he made these different icons and emblems, really just point out of physical condoms. So the packaged condoms and all kind of like zip tied together to create these icons, bringing kind of awareness and knowledge to the widespread use of condoms and how that became part of the culture at that time. I'm reading some of Pete's notes here. He says the natural act of having sex is suddenly becoming a very scary proposition during this time, was kind of what he wanted to draw attention to and awareness to. So he says the human heart shapes, bringing joy and delight while transforming a symbol previously seen as a harbinger of doom into something to be celebrated. So that was a fun installation. Next slide, please. This is the last artist image we'll see here. Timothy White Eagle created this piece, There Comes a Time When You Have to Give Them Back. Timothy was celebrating lives that he lost. So beloved people in his life that he has lost over the years to AIDS. Timothy is an indigenous artist and working in the Apache tradition created these Gone or mountain spirits that are called forth to bring healing. And he created these beautiful compositions on canvas. They were made with soluble charcoal paint and then this red grease. And so the faces were meant to fade over time as it rained and things like that. We're living in a strange time. So I just have to say what's true. Timothy put 13 of these big portraits up along some fencing at the north end of Cal Anderson Park. And that same evening, they were all vandalized. They were all torn down. And they think that was an act of violence. As artists do, Timothy leaned into this kind of tragic moment and created these beautiful ghost-like frames where these portraits had been out of ribbon. And so then for the whole of the summer, a lot of people knew about what had happened. It got some press. And people would go and add more ribbons to these frames that were the ghosts of these portraits that he had made, but then were torn down. So I thought that was a really elegant and beautiful conversation that he created. Next and last slide. So thank you. That's the whole of the temporary projects I want to talk about that were enabled through this queer art bootcamp that we did. And the AMP is having a big dedication. It's Saturday, the 26th of this month from noon to 3. It'll be on the plaza at the Capitol Hill Light Rail Station. You can see all the artworks at that time. The artists will be present. The team from the AMP will be there and many others open to the public. So anyone who can get there, I encourage you to get there. And the amp.org will give you more information about what the AMP is up to, and seattle.gov/arts. We'll fill you in on all the Arts Office has a million beautiful things going on. So that's a great place to learn more about what the Arts Office does. Thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Kristen. And for those of you who didn't happen to catch our live show 2 weeks ago with former council member Tom Rasmussen, we'll link it up right here when you watch this on YouTube. And so at this point, I would like to move along to our final panelist, and that is Cheryl Brown from Parks and Recreation. So welcome back to the stage, Cheryl. And Kristen, please stick around for the Q&A, which happens very soon. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try to go through this quick so there's time for questions. But I represent Seattle Parks and Recreation. Our theme is healthy people, healthy environment, strong communities. And my unit is called Lifelong Recreation, and we provide recreation programs, arts, fitness, social opportunities for people ages 50 and older. Lifelong Recreation has been in production of programs for over 45 years. Our goals are to promote health and wellness, provide life enrichment and community connection through the programs that we offer. Seattle Parks and Recreation has 27 community centers across the city. Our unit consists of 6 full-time recreation specialists. 5 of them are geographically located. One of them supports a citywide volunteer-led walking program called Sound Steps, and also dementia-friendly recreation. I am pushing for, and I hope to get, and maybe if we have some advocates who would like to support this, part-time position, a full 20-hour week position to support the Rainbow Recreation Program. So that's kind of what I'm pushing for. So let's go to the next slide. So if you've been involved in our Rainbow Recreation Program, this flyer might look familiar to you, but this is kind of our logo flyer. And as you see there at the bottom, I don't know if you can see it or not, but we have partnered with Gen Pride in the past to build our programs. This is just one page of what we were doing pre-pandemic. Gentle yoga, Tai Chi, Zumba, pickleball skills, field trips. So we've done educational classes, and we can do anything we want, but this is kind of what we've done. Go to the next slide. Oh, I just inserted some pictures of our program. So this was a ropes course. We did the ropes course, which is at Camp Long, which is not open to the public yet, but hopefully in the fall will be open to the public again. And you can just go there on your own and do the ropes course. You need to make an appointment, or you can sign up for a class and go through a class on there. And then this is one of our Tai Chi classes. Next slide. This was a trip we took to the Wild Horse Wind Farm. Really fun trip, very educational, but I don't know, I think we had 2 full vans of people on that trip, but trips and tours are really great because it's a really great way to get to know people and talk to them one-on-one. And about the only time that we as a staff get to really see people face to face, because we're usually behind the scenes hiring teachers and planning the programs and not actually in them. So I love the trips, and I'm looking forward to them coming back again. Probably won't come back in the fall though. Maybe winter, fingers crossed. Next slide. These were just some other trips we did with the LGBTQ program. We did a wine country overnight, Diablo Dam tour. So I just included some pictures there. Next slide. We do special events. We did a sell, swap, and share, which was a small event, but it was fun, and people, just brought stuff and we traded or sold. This was a rainbow bingo that we did. And this was actually, I did this because a lot of older adults are uncomfortable with things that they don't know. So they might not know anybody who's from the LGBTQ community. So when I can, I try to incorporate programs so people are comfortable with each other, they get to know each other, and they don't need to have that fear that a lot of people have when they are unfamiliar with somebody else. So the other thing we do, I don't know if I have a slide of this, go to the next slide. Yes, we have been doing an annual Mardi Gras party. We did it 3 years, and then we had COVID, but that's been really fun. Lenny's come to them. We usually have entertainment. We have great food spread, and have really great attendance in that. So that's one of our annual events for Rainbow Recreation. Next slide. I told you I like to do education, so I had a high school intern, Trey, he's right here, and he did a research for a quarter on Stonewall and the LGBTQ movement, and he did we did a panel that is actually 6-sided. It's kind of a triangle shaped thing, and then accompanying brochure rack. And we had this at Miller Community Center for a year, and it was an education piece for people who were, you know, just interested in the Stonewall movement and how the LGBTQ movement started. And one of the things that we created, I don't see it on there, but we had a flyer about terms that people might not know or understand or know what they did, gender terms, words that were associated with the LGBTQ community that we had in this too. So just kind of general education. And, you know, that's just one of the things that's important to me. Next slide. We have been doing all of our programs virtually since September. We do have 5 studios set up at 5 community centers, so we actually have our instructors going into the studios and doing the virtual programs there. And in all of our programs, the social aspect is really important. So we allow 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after the program for people to socialize with each other, see each other on the screen and stuff like that. But we will launch the Rainbow Recreation Program and in-person programming again in September. We don't know what community centers we're going to have access to yet, but I have requested access to Miller. We're seeking new instructors for programs, so if anybody has any skills they'd like to share, we do pay our instructors, seeking ideas for new programs, seeking participants. And also we're launching a couple of our volunteer-led programs. Again, we're already doing pickleball, so we have a lot of pickleball ambassadors out there. And then also a lot of pickleball opportunities. So if you haven't played before, it's a great sport for the older body for sure. And for all ages, pickleball really has a resurgence. And we're relaunching our Sound Steps program. So we're looking for people who would be interested in leading walks in the community, so weekly walks in the community. So there's my information. Well, yep, Cheryl.brown@seattle.gov if you have any comments or you want to comment to me. And then our website, and it's probably just as easy to go to www.seattle.gov/parks. And on there, you get a big menu of things where you could sign up for activities, and that's where you could sign up for our programs. You could book a picnic site. You can see what wading pools and spray parks and all that kind of stuff will be open. You can sign up for newsletters. Lifelong Recreation produces 3 newsletters, one for general older adult programs, one for dementia-friendly recreation, one for Sound Steps, and we normally do a Rainbow Recreation newsletter, but I don't have a staff person to support that right now. And again, hoping to have somebody in September for that. So that's it. And I think in the chat are posted links to our Lifelong Recreation brochure, which has virtual, in-person, outdoor programs that will happen this summer. And also all the services that will be open in parks for the summer. I think that link's there too as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Thank you for all the years of work, and look what I got here. It's a Lifelong Recreation brochure. Those were a thing, and this is fall 2019. I hope these are making a comeback. It's nice to hold something in your hands. Age friendly is mentioned there, so we appreciate that as well. We've always appreciated the partnership, and we actually hoping to grow the partnership and see if we can do virtual and hybrid programming together. So don't go anywhere. I'm going to invite everybody else on the panel back on the stage at this time. Let's see, in reverse order, moving now Kristen and then Dominique. And I'll jump off for a second so that the panel is together, and now I can come back on. So in the time that we have remaining, I would like to invite folks in the audience to, to let us know what questions or comments or feedback you have. And again, this will be posted on YouTube. We can continue the conversation there. I'm going to invite one of our moderators, Michael Taylor Judd, to the stage to see what folks are saying. I need to come off the stage to invite you on, but go ahead.
Thank you, Lenny. We had a comment come in and question, I should say, as well, for Dominique. One of our listeners said, "Congratulations on your new position at the Ingersoll Gender Center. Looking ahead, what is your vision for the center's future?"
Actually, that's a really great question. Really, it's not my vision alone, to be honest with you. It is a community vision for the work of Ingersoll. And at this particular moment, the organization is at a place of rejuvenating its healing, right? Of how we take care of our current staff members, some of our former staff members, the folks who volunteer as facilitators for our support group, how we are giving access to like healthcare providers and needs. And so really at this particular point in time, it's about finding a point of real healing and accountability for some of the things that have happened at Ingersoll, and taking a moment to reflect and really make sure that we are standing up practices that reflect the better needs, or the needs, I should say, of what the communities that we serve and our staff at the same time. So right now we're in a lot of revamping, a lot of healing. That word is going to be used a lot, right? And because what we don't want to do is continue to impact and harm trans folks in general, but specifically Black and Brown trans folks. There's been a lot of harm already. So we're going to pause, we're going to heal, and then we're going to rejuvenate our work for the betterment of the community. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Dominique. We also had a comment and question here for Cheryl. Cheryl, while you were talking about doing some research around terms for gender and other things like that. We posted a link to NPR recently had a great list of gender terms as well. And so we received a comment saying, "Thanks for mentioning LGBT terminology. It seems like there are new abbreviations all the time. LGBTQIA+++. Is that posted somewhere?" So we did include that link. And also, can someone speak briefly to pronouns? So actually, I guess this could be for any of you, really, not just Cheryl. But talk a little bit more about, the importance of pronouns and why we all should be educating ourselves and reflecting more on that.
I'm going to defer to Dominique because she seems like more of an expert than I am.
Well, do you want to answer the first part of the question, and then we can circle back to the pronoun question? I know the first one was directed to you specifically.
Okay. That I do not think that pronoun or that terminology flyer is on our website, but I'll see if I can get that posted. That's a good idea. But it may need to be updated depending on what Dominique says right now about pronouns. And I'll read that link that you put in there too.
Oh, great. I'm happy to work together on this, bring my team to the table here and give you more. So I'm not an expert on pronouns, I will say, yet what I know about why we need to uphold and honor people's pronouns is because we're upholding and honoring the humanity of the person, right? That's who they are, right? So when someone says, "These are my pronouns, this is who I am, this is my name," right? "This is my body." We hopefully, and I think that we have to relearn this in the United States, is that because I mean, we were rooted on taking and stealing and harming people, right? But it's to rejuvenate the humanity of who we are. So we hold our pronouns in a sacred space because I'm sharing and expressing to you as another human of who I am. And I am setting my boundaries in terms of how you should honor me and respect me and my pronouns and my body and my time. And I hope to do the same for you. So really, I think that's one of the parts about pronouns. But I would even pause and say, you know, Kristen, do you have some thoughts about it? Or back to you, Cheryl. What do you think?
I think you said it beautifully, and I think we are at this inflection point in our culture, in our society, in our history, where we're questioning everything. And to your point, Dominique, like our history is grounded in taking and harming and trauma, and we are in a moment of collective healing. So it's all about, I think all of these changes we're seeing are about honoring our collective humanity, our individual humanity, and propping each other up in that way. So I'm there with you. I just spent Sunday with a young person who's been in my life since they were 11, and you know, and now they're 19, and just described to me like I've just watched them move from he pronouns to they pronouns, and then on Sunday they said, no, I'm she pronoun, I use she pronouns, and I got a new name. And so, you know, as a person who just turned 50, my brain is like trying to be fluid all the time, but I think it's about propping up each other's humanity. So thank you for framing it in that way.
Thank you so much, panel, for speaking to such an important topic. I know as an ally to the community, I continue to educate myself. I'm a YouTube person, so I try to, I try to follow what influencers are saying in that space. And thank you so much for just framing it as a human, a human interaction is all it is. So I want to. I know we're at 12:02 and we're supposed to run through noon. So a couple of things. First and foremost, panelists, can you stay a little bit longer? Just maybe 5-10 minutes. Possible?
I have someone waiting for me for another engagement. I'm sorry, because it's my last day at the city and I have to go to an exit interview. Actually,
Gotcha.
It's crazy to say that. So I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for having me. This has been wonderful, and to be in thought partnership, Cheryl, with you, and Dominique with you, and Lenny for all of your organizational prowess. Thank you so much. I'm going to say goodbye.
And thank you for being here, Kristen. Really appreciate you. When it's on YouTube, if you have additional questions for Kristen, Cheryl, can you stay for a second? Okay. And sounds like you can as well, Dominique. Okay, awesome. Let's go back to our moderators, and maybe if we could maybe bring on Meg to see if there's anything else that came through in the chat there.
There was one comment for everyone saying, awesome presentations. Thank you all. And there is one more, and I can read it. It was great to hear from the panelists. Sound Steps is hoping to hold a walking exploration and conversation of the AMP project in the near future. And there's a link right in the chat to contact Tamara or Cheryl, and she can send along information. And they would definitely like to work with people who can rebuild the volunteer-led walking programs tailored to the needs of the most marginalized in our community.
All right. Thank you, Meg. I also saw earlier a comment for Cheryl, kind of related, unrelated. Oh yeah, Cheryl, have you seen the YouTube video about crows? And I think it's about research that's done at UW, and it's fascinating. Certainly it's crow diving season, isn't it?
Yeah, that's one of the trips we took with the Rainbow Recreation, was out to the University of Washington to watch the crows come in. They estimate 60,000 crows a night come in and roost at the University of Washington Bothell campus. If you haven't seen it, you ought to go out there. But now many of them stay in their nests, so the good time to go is fall. And that's when you're seeing most of them. But if you're there right at dusk, they're just flying in and they're covering every surface. It's amazing. And my primary focus in my artwork is crows. So somebody might know me and might have brought that up for that reason.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Well, usually at this point, is there anything else, Meg, or are we all clear on the comments there?
Thank you, Lenny. That we're all clear. I don't see any more coming in.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Meg. So to my panelists, to my remaining panelists, if there are any sort of like parting words that you have for our audience, to those of them who stuck around, what have you got?
So we're looking for input. So any input, email me, and I'm looking forward to giving Dominique a call so we can work together and build some programs or support for each other. Thanks, Lenny. I appreciate it.
Cheryl, I would greatly enjoy that and look forward to, connecting with you on this other side. One, just thank you again for having me. Just again, an honor and a pleasure. And if I could leave anything with folks, it's, to remember to just never hold back. If you have something to say, if you have some thoughts, if you want to share anything with all the different folks who represent this space in Age Friendly, but then also, know that they're deeply connected to other folks in the city of Seattle. So never hold back with your thoughts on how to make the city a better place. So happy Pride and happy Juneteenth to you all.
Thank you, Dominique, and thank you, Cheryl. I'm going to let you go. However, to those folks who are still here, I promised a video. So once we wrap here, I'm going to say goodbye, but I am going to play the video that shows the float. So it will be seen. All right. Thank you all. So next slide, please. Before we go, I definitely want to invite folks to save the date. We'll have 2 guests from Public Health Seattle and King County, Shauna Clark, RN, and James Lewis, MD, MPH. And they will do sort of a run through of what we briefly mentioned in like 3 minutes. Talk about vaccinations, talk about, new variants, you name it. If you have questions for the way epidemiology does this work at Seattle and King County Public Health, please bring him in a couple of weeks. And, if there are questions, again, about anything related to aging or disability, we invite you to call Community Living Connections at 1-844-348-5464, or visit them on the web at communitylivingconnections.org. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you being an age-friendly champion. To us, that means that you were here. If you want, go ahead and click that subscribe button. And if not, just come back and see us again. We want to wish you the best. I'm looking over outside my window. It's getting sunny out there. Stay cool out there. And with that, I'm going to play that video. Thank you all again so much for showing up.
This is a fun fact for the city of Seattle if you work for the city. If you're a volunteer, and thank you so much for being with us today. This is the first time that we've had this many departments participate in the Seattle Pride Parade. It is my absolute goal while I work for the city, and it's my honor to do so, to make sure that every single department shows up. So next year, we're going to fill this whole street with the city of Seattle